often stop off at my dad's house after work on Friday. Work for Democrats is somewhere you go to make money. And this was happened to be a Monday, actually. And Eric Bolling had a good dissertation, a good speech, a good spiel on Democrat crime in Joe Biden's America. Like you remember, I'll leave the links in there for all this. See the links in the video description and my little speech. Breonna Tyler Cohen or something, whatever his name is, that vanilla midget, calculated that the homicide rates in Republican states was much higher than Democrat states. And I said there's a lot more to it than that, and I debunked it. So I'll leave a link for that. I've got about 5 or 6 of them I've debunked him on now. Now, what if we take the homicide rate when the 2022 numbers come out, and we look at it for Joe Biden's America in 2021 and 2022 and compare it to the 4 years before that under Trump? And the homicide rate will be much higher. And they'll say, well, not every state's the same. We got to do it at state level. Okay. How about then we can drill it down to county level? And you could go even further. And John Lott has elucidated this in some of his writings. Most of the homicide in places like Chicago and Indianapolis and D.C. are in certain sectors of the city. It's not all over the city. So just because a state has a high homicide rate, that doesn't mean it's white Trump supporters, even if it voted 60% for Donald Trump. You drill it down to counties, and the most violent jurisdictions in America are usually Democrats. So I was able to find Bolling's speech online, but I'll play a little clip of when me and my dad were listening to it. You can listen to us banter, because I know you want to hear that just for a few seconds, which would be a lot better me recording it on my tablet off his TV than recording it directly off the internet. But here's something I got for you. Again, keep beating this drum, folks. The following Democrat enclaves: Stockton, California; Baltimore, Detroit, Cleveland, Jackson, Memphis, Birmingham, New Orleans, East St. Louis City, Atlanta, Bibb County, Georgia; Dougherty County, Georgia; Montgomery City, Alabama; Baton Rouge; Flint, Michigan; Philadelphia; Pine Bluff, Arkansas; Rochester, New York; Buffalo; Greensboro, North Carolina; Durham, North Carolina; Fayetteville, North Carolina; Milwaukee, Wisconsin; Dayton, Ohio; Danville; Portsmouth; Hampton; Newport News; Petersburg; Norfolk, Roanoke, and Richmond, Virginia; Washington, D.C., there's a toilet; Compton, California; North Little Rock, Arkansas; Wilmington, that's Plug's hometown; Newark, Camden, New Jersey; Chicago; Gary, Indiana; Little Rock, Arkansas; Houston, St. Paul, Minneapolis; Cincinnati, Indianapolis; Albuquerque; Louisville, Syracuse; Kansas City, Missouri; Oakland; Augusta / Richmond County, Georgia; Savannah, Georgia; and Shreveport. Those Democrat enclaves were only 6.354% of the entire U.S. population, 2018 to 2020. They had a homicide rate of 24.856 per 100,000, which is more than about 4.5 times the U.S. average. They had 28.54% of all homicides, 2018 to 2020. Whether it's a high homicide or low homicide state won by Trump, or a high homicide or low homicide state won by Biden and Hillary, the jurisdictions spiking the homicide rate are typically diverse areas run by Democrats. They usually have a lot of fatherless children and black-on-black homicide. Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee are perfect examples of high homicide Republican states that have a lot of that black-on-black homicide. Like, for example, Tennessee, most of their homicide is in 2 counties that there's only about 3 counties that Democrats win big in Tennessee, and 2 of those 3 are where most of the homicide is at. So again, if you look at the homicide rate for the country in 2021 and 2022, and I'm sure it'll be higher, much higher than it was the 4 years previous, then they'll say, like I said, not all states are the same. We need to go look at each state individually. Well, then we can look at each county individually. And then you can even drill it down to cities. Like in Chicago, it's a few neighborhoods where it's really bad. Just keep pounding this in their heads. This is the Democrat crime wave. The real insurrection is a Democrat insurrection. And here's how it goes. 1, throw guys like Kyle Rittenhouse in prison if they defend their communities from fatherless terrorists. 2, take away guns from law-abiding gun owners, especially ones in rural areas. Because there's not a homicide problem in western Iowa. There's not a homicide problem in most of Montana, most of Missouri, most of Minnesota, most of New York State, and most of Maine, most of Texas, most of Florida. Even most of California doesn't have it. But guess where it is getting bad? So throw Kyle Rittenhouse in jail for defending his community. 2, take away guns from law-abiding gun owners. 3, intimidate the police into no proactive policing in high crime areas, which will likely result in less bad guys being caught, and or defund the police and eliminate them. So when they go crazy, when the fatherless lunatics and terrorists go out and burn the town down, nobody's there to stop them. And 4, let lunatics who should be locked up behind bars loose. From 2008 to 2020, Asians averaged 1.357% of all arrestees for violent crime. Asians were 4.8% of the population in 2010 and 5.9% in 2020. Keep that in mind. Of all the arrestees for murder / non-negligent manslaughter in 2008 to 2020, only 1.15% of the arrestees were Asian. How come Asians are arrested for violent crimes and homicide at a much lower volume and rate than blacks? Why? Why are Asians behaving so well? From 2008 to 2020, black men were 43.866% of all expanded homicide data victims, according to the FBI. Remember, black men are roughly 6.6% of the U.S. population. They are typically 44% of all homicide victims. A lot of black-on-black homicide. Of all the arrestees for murder / non-negligent manslaughter from 2008 to 2019, do you know over 51% of the arrestees were black? And if we assume, not gratuitously, that 80% of the black arrestees for murder are black men, because typically 75% of the arrestees for violent crime are men. Men commit most of the crime, and 80% of the arrestees for murder typically are men. So if we assume that 80% of the black arrestees for murder in the U.S. are black men, that means a segment of the population that is only 6.6% of the entire U.S. population is responsible for almost 41% of all the arrests for murder. And lastly, the black-on-black homicide rate is 4.5 times higher than the white-on-white homicide rate. Just keep pounding the drum, folks. This crime wave in the U.S. is a Democrat crime wave. And again, if some uneducated idiot says we're not safe anywhere, say, well, what dung hole do you live in, buddy? Because if you're in western Iowa, rural white western Iowa, there's not a homicide problem. Most of Nebraska, there's not a homicide problem, although finding data for Nebraska on that it's like pulling teeth. There's not a homicide problem in Wyoming. There's not a homicide problem in Montana. Most of Montana, Idaho, okay, even Washington State. So here you go.
Decline, New York, there's usually some video of someone getting sucker punched on a subway platform.
Black against black.
Broad daylight on the streets of America.
You shouldn't be surprised at that.
Now, aside from the horrendous sucker punch absurdity going on in New York, there's a new game in town for the thug.
62 shot in Chicago.
Armed scooter robbery.
Tell me about Uvalde and Highland Park again,
now
right?
Look at this, armed scooter robbery.
The license plates, and there are 2 thugs to a scooter usually. They roll up to random people on the street or in a car stuck in traffic. They pull a gun, they pull a knife, and they rip these people off. They steal their watches or wallets or both, right there in broad daylight, right on the street. They use the daytime and the rush hour to their getaway advantage. Cops can't weave through the Manhattan traffic, and the cops are forced to stand and watch as the thugs scoot off, winding in and out of rush hour stalled traffic. And we can never leave out Philly, folks.
So I'm thinking over the weekend, I was thinking about the show, as I always do, and Sunday night I usually start seeing the crime stats from the weekend around the country, and I start piecing together the monologues for the Monday show. Crime on Mondays has become a regular segment here simply because there's so much of it, so much to show you and talk about. I feel I have to. And by the way, Chicago seems to have dozens of shootings and usually double-digit homicides or close to it every weekend. It's just terrible. Then in New York, that city is in such decline. New York, there's usually some video of someone getting sucker punched on a subway platform. Wow. Wow. Broad daylight on the streets of America's largest city. And now, aside from the horrendous sucker punch absurdity going on in New York, there's a new game in town for the thug life criminal element there. Armed scooter robbery. They're rolling bands of thugs on motor scooters, unmarked, of course, no license plates, and there are 2 thugs to a scooter usually. They roll up to random people on the street or in a car stuck in traffic. They pull a gun, they pull a knife, and they rip these people off. They steal their watches or wallets or both right there in broad daylight, right on the street. They use the daytime and the rush hour to their getaway advantage. Cops can't weave through the Manhattan traffic, and the cops are forced to stand and watch as the thugs scoot off, winding in and out of rush hour stalled traffic. And we can never leave out Philly, folks, always the top of the crime weekend blotters. Philly, they tend to ambush unsuspecting citizens while they're least expecting to be assaulted. Remember those stories? Way too many of them, in fact, including this one, where a woman is bringing her baby shower gifts. She's pregnant to her home. She gets ambushed by a thug, killing her and her unborn child. And those criminals don't care if kids are around either, right? And remember, crime's not limited to the East Coast and the Midwest. In Los Angeles or Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco, the videos are stomach-turning. The abject failure of liberal policies are playing out to see right there on video. The drug-infested and homelessness drama playing out right on the streets of those cities, too. And it's not just a one-off. These videos are ongoing. They're getting worse and worse, and it's becoming so prevalent, parents can't even shield their children from the pure defilement of America's streets and cities. Watch.
Hey, bye, kids. Y'all get home safe, okay? Y'all get home safe. Get home safe. Come on, man.
Kids got to walk through that. That dad videotape his kids tiptoeing around the feces-infected junkies shooting drugs up right there in the street, right in front of them. These junkies don't even try and hide it anymore. It's a sad statement that every Monday we have enough video of crime to do a segment on the crime waves in Joe Biden's America. It reminds me of the line from Catherine Lee Bates' poem, which in 1910 became the second lyric in America the Beautiful, where the line, "Amber waves of grain," second verse of the famous song. Bates is describing the beautifully flowing wheat fields of the Midwest and their amber color as they mature. Instead of Purple Mountain's majesty and amber waves of grain in Biden's America, we have purple mountains of trash and needles and amber waves of carnage. And yet, week after week, I report the crime and the grime, and we watch it, and nothing changes. And that's the point here. Nothing is changing. And the very worst part is that we're getting used to those videos. We're getting numb to the atrocious scenes we're seeing every Monday from the weekend. Biden doesn't care. He, Obama, and the progressives running the country into the ground claim that being tough on crime is so racist, and cleaning up our streets, freeing American businesses and children coming off the bus from discussing homeless junkies shooting drugs for all to see, well, then urinating on the worst, doing worse on the sidewalks. Somehow cleaning all that up is insensitive and bigoted. Again, instead of Purple Mountain's majesty and amber waves of grain, in Biden's America, we have purple mountains of trash and needles and amber waves of carnage. It's a powerful and accurate statement about the state of liberalism in America right now. The criminals are the victims, and the liberals are now normalizing crime. People aren't outraged anymore. We watch these videos and say, oh, wow, terrible, glad I don't live in New York or Chicago. But we all live in America. And Biden, Joe Obama are running and ruining America, one city at a time. You know what I see when I watch those videos? Look, just watch that for a second. Just watch this for a second. Take note of what's going on. Here we go. Just keep going. Watch. Look at the people watching. Look at the people standing around. Someone's videotaping this. You know what I see when I watch stuff like that? I see a country declining fast. So fast, it's like we're frozen. It's happening so fast and so dramatically terrible. We just watch. We want to do something, but it feels like we're helpless. Again, because it's happening so fast. But do you realize what else we're seeing right there when we watch the scenes like that of assaults happening, sucker punches happening, gangs of thugs beating up a single victim? Look at the bystanders. They're just watching.
Bro, please go. Oh.
Takes a hammer. Starts assaulting people. Starts hitting people. This guy's videotaping. Watch what he does. Think he's going to leave that girl alone? He's not. He's not going to leave her alone. He's going to get back to her. Yeah, he goes back to her. People are watching violent assaults, crimes, criminal thugs beating the life out of victims, and they videotape the scene. No one jumps in anymore. Do you notice that? No one wants to be accused of being racist by getting involved. God forbid someone stops one of these thugs or calls a cop. No, they all just stand around and watch the wounded victim getting pummeled. Watch it, and they tape it. People have lost their sense of responsibility. Americans, people have abandoned, for some reason, all sense of responsibility, of civility. Civility. In Biden's, in Joe Obama's America, you're not expected to help someone getting assaulted. You may be called racist or bigoted. Now, I want you to watch this video sent to me from a friend. Her son's class, right there. That kid getting beat up in school. See that? It's hard to watch, folks. But notice how all the other kids just watch the violent assault happening. And notice the friend of the thug videotapes the assault. Watch. Tough to watch, right? That kid continues to roll tape on that while the thug follows the victim down the hallway. And it got worse for this poor guy. That guy right here coming up right now. This guy gets slammed into a brick wall head first. He continues to get beat on as he's clearly defenseless. Again, tough to watch, but these things need to be seen. This is what I'm talking about right here. Wow. Keeps going. Once wasn't enough. Slamming the kid's head into the wall, the brick wall, wasn't enough. The kid's clearly hurt, defenseless. It's disgusting how the progressives are normalizing violent crime in Biden's America. It's nauseating to see how far America has declined when an innocent and helpless victim gets destroyed and the perps, pals, are there videotaping the whole thing. And people, random people, are now bystanders and watchers looking for a view to a kill, so to speak. To be honest, the progressive leftists are normalizing violent crime